Hello internet friends, and welcome to the Legion Beta second pass look here at the Assassination Rogue. And I'm sorry for the delay. If you've been keeping up with the videos and testing coverage live, you'll know that I should have been out like a day ago. But the IRL MMO is so hard, please nerf. So while I'm wearing the same shirt just for continuity purposes, so if you watch the stream, I'm wearing the same shirt in the video just to keep it so it's not like, oh my god, what happened? He left us, he forgot about us. No. I talked about how in the other videos that the Assassination Rogue was, by many, the best of the three rogue classes. But I don't know. I feel like they all have their quirks and their problems right now, and Assassination has the least amount of them. The Assassination Rogue might have like the scariest in terms of balancing currently, due to the fact that they can do some serious damage, but numbers aren't tuned yet. But the problem is they do so much in a very short period of time, which I'll show all of that later on in this video, of course. You'll also notice that your dagger sheath on your back, and they also fixed the sheathing of them so they don't, like, intersect each other anymore. They're kind of offset on your back, which is pretty nice. Those are the King Slayers, as it were. And they're very pretty. They're very, very nice. So yeah, Assassination and Subtlety both use daggers, and Outlaw Rogues use swords. But anyway, let's get right into this. And of course, if you want to watch the full VOD of testing, which, let me look up my notes here, is actually, oh my goodness, yeah. So Subtlety is 5.5 hours, Outlaw is 5 hours, and Assassination is just under 4 hours. They're all linked in the video description box below. The link to the VOD, link to my notes, and bug report, they're all down there as well. And of course, my channel guide to check out all of my coverage, linked down below, as well as ways you want to help support me. Of course, just watching my ads on this YouTube video help that well too, so thank you very much. But the Assassination Rogue is, I think it feels like a faster version of those NPCs that keep talking in this background, isn't it? They have a much smoother rotation, I feel, because the RNG involved in just rolling the bones over and over again a true bearing is why Outlaw right now is clunky and terrible. And then there is the awkwardness of the RNG of Shadow Dance for Subtlety. Assassination doesn't have any of that. You build combo points, you pool energy, you use finishers, you put up bleeds, you keep your poisons up, you rotate in your cooldowns. That's really it. It has, I would say, almost like an A, B, C, D overall arcing rotation, depending on how you use your talents, where you'll have these multiple micro burst phases, depending on your cooldown timings, that change how the class plays. But Assassination is very much, it's not as much the sub-rogue, which is like a ninja. They're like opportunistic striking, they build up column points, and then they burst for a lot of damage, right? And that's all they kind of do. Their other rotation is a lot of just like stabbing awkwardly, just waiting around. Assassination kind of has this smooth period of time where it's always doing damage with bleeds and finishers and poisons, and then all of a sudden you have like a 1 minute cooldown or a 90-second cooldown come up, and then you go kind of like ham, egg, and cheese on the core for like 10 seconds, and then you're back to the smooth. And those burst periods are like A, B, C, and D because different cooldowns will line up at different intervals, and it kind of changes how you react to that interval. But baseline-wise, we have Venomous Wounds, which is you regain 7 energy each time your abilities deal damage to a poisoned target. But only your, oops, my mouse, only your bleed abilities will gain you this energy. So by default, you only have 2 bleeds. But there's not a lot of waiting around. Like, remember on sub, you kind of wait for your passive shadow techniques to give you combo points. There's like none of that. The more poison targets you have via Fan of Knives, and the more targets you then also have bleeding, the more energy regen you get. And you can get a lot of energy regen going on. You also have Sealed Fate, which is your critical strikes with a melee attack that generates combo points. You will gain an additional combo point per critical strike. That's per critical strike. So if you walk over here and hit a Mutilate real quick, and it gets a double crit, it'll give you 4 combo points. No double crit. Nope, nothing right there. So it's a lot of combo points very, very fast if you, of course, get crits. You do still have your poisons, though. You have non-lethal and lethal poisons. I'm going to put some of those on right now just so I get that energy regen going to show off some abilities. You still, of course, have the poison toggle. I have Leeching Poison currently talented right now, but it's just Leech. And then I don't have Agonizing Poison on right now, so I'm going to turn that off later. But your main poison is Deadly, which is your lethal poison that will cause nature damage over time to the enemy over 12 seconds, and then subsequent poison attacks that when it's already poisoned will refresh the duration of the poison dot, and then it will also deal initial poison damage. You also have your wound poison, which is also a lethal poison, but it deals only instant inflict damage, which is a little bit stronger than Deadly, but of course there's no dot involved, and then it has the Mortal Strike effect. Then there's Crippling, which is non-lethal, which is a 50% snare for 12 seconds. And each strike with all your poisons by default has a 20% chance to apply. And then Leeching Poison, which is the talent, is just 10% leech for an hour, non-lethal. So good for questing, maybe even good for raids, because you don't always want to slow things, nor are you actually going to be really the one that slows things in raids, normally. So you usually will have on Deadly Poison and then Crippling on your offhand, or Leech Poison, whatever have you. So if I get in here and get some crits, hopefully, I'll be able to show off some of the Sealed Fate nonsense. And this does work with Fan of Knives. So you can get I only have like, what, 22% crit right now? So you're not going to see a ton. You'll see some animations and things right here while I go over the Sealed Fate nonsense. If it ever wants to crit, there we go. There was 3 combo points from 1 Mutilate, which is very pretty good. And you also see the energy regeneration in this crappy blue gear on 1 target, which is pretty there we go. That was a double crit right there. So you look in the combat log here, Mutilate gives you 2 combo points, and then Sealed Fate and Sealed Fate both give you 1. And this does work with Fan of Knives. So there's a little difference between Fan of Knives and Shuriken Storm. So Subtlety Rogue's Shuriken Storm, which is roughly the same thing. What Shuriken Storm does, however, it gives you 1 combo point per target you actually hit. Okay? But Fan of Knives, because we're talking about Sealed Fate right here, Fan of Knives is 1 combo point for using the ability, but because of Sealed Fate, if you Fan of Knives 5 targets and all of them crit, you would with like DS Talented or whatever, or I have Anticipation right now, which Anticipation is also kind of like the worst talent for combo points for the Assassination Rogue, but more on that later. The Sealed Fate procs on Fan of Knives, again, is per critical strike. So you can Fan of Knives and fill your combo points. I got 4 right there on that one. So I have 2 as 1 normally, right? Because it has to crit each individual target, which obviously will only happen so much because I only have a 22% chance to crit. But there's 2 right there. There's 1. There's 3 that time. So the AoE / single target rotation that Subtlety has with AoEing with Fan of Knives to get like cross-dotting Night Blades out, right? Or to put more single target damage onto the main kill target is kind of similar to how Fan of Knives work. The problem is Subtlety Rogue still has a lot less. Of all 3 rogue specs, Subtlety has the least AoE. Easily the least AoE. I would probably put it between cooldown-oriented Super Saiyan Outlaw Blade Flurry has like a lot of consistent crazy AoE damage, but I think the Assassination Rogue probably has the highest burst damage, because Fan of Knives is physical damage and will apply your active poisons at their normal rate, and because you'll have Deadly Poison on when you're AoEing, Deadly Poison also puts a dot up, and applications when you're already hitting poison targets will just deal instant nature damage. And there's also perks later on that will amplify that even more, and talents as well. So I think the Assassination Rogue has probably the best burst AoE, and as you do the same thing where you are going to be cross-poisoning and putting up ruptures and garrots randomly, you'll get more and more and more and more energy back, so your AoE just continuously scales higher and higher and higher, because you are just gaining that so much energy back over time. And you'll see right here real quick that I have Anticipation for these early showing-offs, because you get so much energy back over this, only on 3 targets right now too, that it's kind of hard to keep up with overall, randomly. And you'll just be flooded with energy and combo points to do the same kind of thing that you do on sub, but overall you have a lot more AoE damage going out as the Assassination Rogue for AoE. But again, like, not every class can do crazy AoE damage. You're not an Arms Warrior with the new Ravager / Whirlwind spam and Dragon's Roar, all of those stuff like that, right? Like, there's different amounts of AoE damage that each class can do. But Sealed Fate is a huge component for both the single target and the AoE damage of the Assassination Rogue. Your mastery is Potent Poisons, which are next to the Potent Potables on the shelf of double alliteration. But increases your damage done by your poisons by 49%. This also still increases the damage done by your main finisher, which is Envenom, which is a finishing move that dives your poisoned blades in deep, dealing instant nature damage and increasing your poison application chance by 30% additively. So poisons by default, that's a 50% chance to apply. During the Envenom window, will have a 80% chance to apply. Agonizing poison only has a 20% chance to apply. So during the Envenom window, it goes up to a 50% chance to apply. For the duration, based on your combo points used. So if you use Deeper Stratagem, of course, it'll go up to a higher amount. And, which I'll show off more later, which is why Death from Above is probably going to be really good for Assassination. Death from Above is a 50% stronger effect on your Envenom, which means that the bonus time on your Envenom window is longer with DFA than it is with a normal Envenom. So just to keep that in mind for food for thought. But the overall rotation, you're going to keep up your Rupture, which is a bleed, so it ignores armor. Same thing with your poisons. They're nature damage, magic damage. They ignore armor. All attack power based. So 25 energy, 1 to 5, or 6 combo points that finishes a move that tears open your target, dealing bleed damage over time and lasts longer per combo points. This is your main source of damage. I don't know if it's all your damage, but between your deadly poison always up and you putting up Rupture all the time, Rupture is going to be a huge component to your overall damage as the Assassination Rogue. Assassination is very much about poisons and bleeds, and their combo point generating abilities and Envenom only sort of just build you to that period of time. They do okay damage, but your breakdown's going to be dot-oriented, like you're a melee dot class. And then, of course, your main builder is going to be still Mutilate, 55 energy. If you notice right now, too, that the Mutilate Rogue, or the Sin Rogue, or the Sass Rogue we see here, has 120 energy baseline. This built into the class. The other two Rogue specs have 100 baseline. So the Mutilate Rogue, the Sub Rogue, the Mutilate Rogue has more than Sub and Outlaw. But both weapon attack, which it deals total of physical damage with both weapons at the same time. 2 combo points baseline, but if both hands crit, you will get, again, thus 4 combo points due to the fact that it is a double attack. Mutilate and Mutilate offhand. Each has their own chance, that 50% or 80% chance to also apply your deadly poison on hit effect whenever you mutilate, of course. Also, the animation for Rupture is so good. I'm kind of sad they gave the same animation to the Nightblade effect on the Sub-Rogue, because it doesn't feel like Nightblade is a shadow damage dot, and the effect of Mutilating, which is the double attack straightforward, and then the Rupture attack is like one after another and then rip the gushing wound open. It's kind of weird they gave that to a shadow damage dot that just like happens, but you know, they could change that, but who knows. But that's the basic rotation. You also have Grotte, or Grot, or Garotte. More words that I'm going to mispronounce that people are going to get, like, totally, like, triggered by. I'm just kidding, okay? I always pronounce it Garotte, but I know it can be pronounced Garot, and the Garotte is just a joke, obviously. So 15-second cooldown, melee range, 45 energy, where you Garotte the enemy, causing a whole bunch of bleed damage over 18 seconds, and you silence the target for 3 seconds from stealth. So it's right there. So you're going to utilize Garotte in your rotation. Of course, you can do some stealth-based shenanigans with it, but for the most part, you're just hitting it on cooldown. And it does pandemic the effect, so if you put it up after it comes back up immediately, you'll gain a couple extra seconds on the overall effect. And people were wondering, too, about if, that Rupture pandemics? It does pandemic, which is weird why Nightblade doesn't pandemic. So you can put up 32 seconds of Rupture when you refresh it early. Same thing when you refresh Garotte early, it will go from the 18-second window to like 21 seconds, I think. It's 30% more of the overall time can be added. So 30% of 18 would be like, I don't know, 3? Yeah, 21 seconds with a 0 fall-off tick, so yeah. Not too bad. And your other passive is Fleet-Footed. All rogues have this 15% passive movement speed, and you take reduced fall damage. If you're a sub-rogue, which makes the other rogues salty, and feral druids, you are immune to fall damage as a sub-rogue with your artifact perk, but the other rogues just have the movement speed passive, And of course, you take less fall damage because you're still a rogue. You're kind of like a ninja, but different strains. So that's that. You still, of course, have Vanish on a 2-minute cooldown. Poof. You have Tricks of the Trade. All rogues still have this. Of course, you have Stealth. Go in and out of Stealth normally as you would. You still have Sprint, usable while Stealth, 70% movement speed for 8 seconds, 50-second cooldown. That is an artifact perk, I believe, right? Yeah, 1-minute cooldown baseline. Yeah, Shadow Step baseline as the Assassination Rogue as well. It's just a blink to behind the target and a short little sprint for 2 seconds on a 30-second cooldown, 25-yard range. You still, of course, have Sap, which requires a melee weapon in stealth, 10-yard range, 35 energy, only one target may be sapped at one time. It's an incapacitated effect, so it breaks on damage, as it would. Then you, of course, have your poisons again, all those right there. You have Kidney Shot as the Assassination Rogue, as Sub does as well. Outlaw Rogue has Between the Eyes, which is a ranged kidney shot that actually causes damage, whereas Kidney Shot for Sub and Assassination does not do any damage. Same cooldown ratio, though, but requires melee range. Picklock and Pickpocket. You have Poisoned Knife as the Assassination Rogue, which is your ranged pulling tool by default. But what Poisoned Knife does is it costs 40 energy, and you throw a poisoned-coated knife, dealing damage, just physical damage, and then you apply your active non-lethal and lethal poisons. Apply them. Not a chance to apply them, it applies them. So there actually is this weird back and forth that I'm curious about, that if you're ever using like DS or Vigor and you're at 4 or 5 combo points, if you'd ever actually just use Poisoned Knife to gain the 1 combo point you need. But I've also told that, like, unless it's Rupture, which you always want to put Rupture up at max stacks on single target, on AoE, you'll kind of like Fan of Knives once or twice, and then you put up a Rupture, like tab target Rupture. Like, anything over 3 or 4 combo points, I was told, is fine for tab targeting Rupture, because you'll be back around to re-tab target again, and then you'll pandemic that effect a little bit anyway. But for single target, Envenom can be used at, like, 4, and it's okay, but I wouldn't think you'd want to use Death from Above, for example, at less combo points because you want that juicy Envenom window to last as long as possible. But Poison Knife costs 40 energy, Mutilate is 55, but always gives you 2, so you could waste combo points at higher amounts. And then Garrote costs 45, which is still 5 more, but it also has a 15-second cooldown, so you can't reliably have Garrote up every single time you want that one last combo point. So I am curious if you'd use Poison Knife in the rotation just to give you 1 more, and then use a finisher. But by default, it is for range pulling, for applying your poisons immediately. There is some kind of shenanigans that we was talking about on stream that you can take Agonizing Poison, and in the Envenom window, just spam Poisoned Knife to stack the buff on yourself more, or on the target rather, sorry. But that's not very good either. It's also weird for poison damage effects, because Mutilate is 2 attacks, that it actually has a double the chance to proc 2 poisons, or not proc any at all, obviously. But Poison Knife is only going to be 1 for the global. So there is this weird trade-off that I think that Poison Knife could be a thing. Obviously, it's a ranged tool where you could snare people from 30 freaking yards away, right? Also, when you take your weapons off, your poisons go away, which is kind of strange. But if you have Crippling Poison on, and you throw a Poisoned Knife, you will always snare the target. Which is pretty sick. Like, sick, savage, nasty. Because you'll always have this 30-yard spammable 50% snare. Which is kind of ridiculous. Obviously, poisons are a nature effect that can be removed, right? They can be removed by, anti-poison, remove poison, abolish poison, that kind of stuff. But it's a huge ranged snare. I mean, I guess Pistol Shot for the Outlaw Rogue kind of has a snare on it too, but that is a much closer ranged ability, whereas this is freaking 30 yards away. I mean, how can I find... Where's that? Way over here. That's pretty far for PvP purposes, right? Not gonna really matter for PvE, but it's obviously your pulling tool for questing and whatnot. Again, take your weapons off, and your poisons go away. So they're not applied to your weapons anymore, they're applied to you. So you put them back on, they're gone. So remember that for, like, hot swapping or whatever. But, yeah, your poisons will go away every time you take your weapons off, which is kind of strange. But I guess it makes sense, because you remove your weapons, you technically are removing your poisons too, so you can put on poisons, and if you want to change them up easily, you can take them off, put them back on again, and put new poisons back on. But you can only have 1 lethal and 1 non-lethal poison anyway on either... they're not on hands anymore, they're just on yourself. So... we also have Kick, of course, a 15-second cooldown, interrupt off the global cooldown. It's a 5-second spell lockout if you hit something. Still have Feint, of course. All rogues have Feint. It's so OP. So performs an evasive maneuver, reducing all damage taken from area of effect attacks by 50% for 5 seconds. Has the new little animation, which is the new animation you have for Fan of Knives and stuff like that. Obviously, it's a little less impressive because all you do is just spin around in the circle. Evasion is baseline for the Assassination and Sub-Rogue. So 100% dodge chance for 10 seconds, 2-minute cooldown. Had Distract, of course, which, again, Distract moves the conal detection range on those affected, so you can get behind them and pickpocket, or open up easier and not get seen in stealth. Seen while in stealth, and then you'll also be able to sap them easier as well. You have Crimson Vial. All rogues have Crimson Vial. It's basically your Estus Flask. By default, it's 30 energy, 30-second cooldown for 30% of your max HP over 6 seconds. You see it right here in the combat log right there. Huge survivability, which is also why I'm a little bit, like, frustrated with my class for Enhancement Shaman, because rogues have Feint, and you can talent it to make it better. You have Evasion, you have Vanish, and you have Crimson Vial, and you have Stuns, and you have Cloak of Shadows, which is a 90-second cooldown where you instantly remove all harmful spell effects on yourself, and then for 5 seconds after the cloak lingers, also making you resist all harmful spells. And then, of course, you have Cheap Shot from stealth, 4-second stun, 2 combo points. So rogues have a ton of survivability, which some people say it's less or more than the current iterations, because you obviously don't have Recuperate anymore baseline. Only Outlaw has Recuperate, as Roll of Bones part of with Jolly Roger, which is technically rolling Snake Eyes, which is bad for DPS. But dead DPS does dead DPS do no damage. So staying alive is totally a thing you need to worry about. But that is everything. Your only baseline cooldown, as you've seen here a little bit, is V for Vendetta, which is 2-minute cooldown, 30-yard range for putting it on the target. You mark an enemy for death for 20 seconds, increasing the damage your abilities and auto attacks deal to the target by 30%, and then make the target visible to you even through concealment such as stealth and invisibility. So just like this, that's all it does. So it's off the global cooldown, if I do recall that animation right there. There are some cool perks with your other... The red effect goes away after a little while. It kind of fades in and fades out now. I don't know if that's new or not. But the target will take 30% more damage from your auto attacks and abilities. And it's just 2-minute cooldown. It's really strong for, obviously, burst, but the windows of time, again, going back to that A, B, C, D rotation thing, it gets a little bit more different when you add on the Kingslayers, Anguish, and Sorrow, both right here. So countless voices hushed, and countless leaders toppled, all the whim of his foul command. There would be no redemption for these acts, only solitude and sorrow is your offhand. And it was not a pleasant death, but it was fast, quiet, and efficient. When the orc took his last breath, the wound that killed him became irregular. Nobody would be able to tell whether he had died to a knife, an axe, or a spear. So, pretty visceral explanation of the Assassination Rogue on your artifacts. Now, I have not done your artifact quest, so I don't know where you actually get them. I'll be doing all the artifact quest coverage in July and early August. If you check my channel guide, I have it all laid out already. So I'll be doing every artifact quest once they patch it that you can skip the Broken Shore, because... But your artifact weapon, you actually get a ability. Some classes don't. But the artifact weapon perk you gain here is called King's Bane, which is a 45-second cooldown. Again, your cooldowns have weird inter-timings here, where you release lethal poison from within the Kingslayers and inject it into your target, dealing a whole bunch of nature damage instantly, and an additional higher amount over 14 seconds. But each time you apply a lethal poison, deadly, wound, or agonizing, to the target affected by Kingsbane's poison, you will increase the damage by 20%. Now, I have this written down here in my notes. Let me pull it up real quick here. That the damage is not, like, continuously multiplicative. Like, it doesn't just keep going and going and going and going and going and going forever, because that would be ridiculous. So, what it does is it kind of has this, like, additive multiplicative state where... Oh, my God, my notes. I got to scroll down back into them. So, what it does now is there's a base damage amount on Kingsbane. Base damage, the 121, 513, which is amplified by your mastery. Attack power based. What happens now is that the bonus damage will be 1.2 times the number of additional applications. So you're not adding 20% onto that dot, and then adding 20% on to that dot, and then 20% on to that dot. What you're doing is you're taking all your application bonuses over time. It only ticks 7 times in 14 seconds. So, like, the last tick will most likely always be your strongest one, depending on RNG of putting on poisons, lethal procs. So, but everything else you can do stacks with Kingsbane. So having the Envenom window up is huge. Having Vendetta up will make it cause more damage over the course of time. But again, 45-second cooldown, so the off timing is a little bit strange there. And every time you add on, you're adding on 20% of the actual base damage of the poison, just over and over and over again. So it will get to a huge dot. I've seen nearly 100,000 last tick dots on Kingsbane, which is almost more than the entire thing does in 14 seconds. So it gets a little ridiculous the deeper you go with how you can stack this Kingsbane. So again, I have more notes, of course, in my Google document below. But what I've found out is the best way to utilize the Kingsbane, which I don't know if I was right or wrong about this, of course, is that, we'll put our poisons back on here, is that you want to have energy pooled. You want to, right, you want to, I'm gonna put my dots up so I have more energy back after I do this. So you want to put Kingsbane up at a high energy, because rogues always pool their energy. And then you want to Envenom and then Kingsbane, and then get off those sweet, sweet Mutilates inside the Envenom window, and then Envenom again, and then get off more Mutilates in the Envenom window, because each Envenom hit has 2 chances to proc more Kingsbane poison. For that, you saw my last tick of Kingsbane was 76,000, because every time you Envenom, you put in Envenom, you get 30% more Envenom window, and when you mutilate, you have 80% chance per weapon to proc deadly poison, which then will give 20% more to the base damage of Kingsbane. So you go back up here in the combat log, all the way back up here where I there we go. So like 22,000, and then it goes up. We probably got a proc there. You have 38,000, and we got more going down here. We've got 49,000, 57,000. And then 68,000, and then the final one was 76,000 damage. So, twice actually. 76,000 twice. So I did not get any deadly poison procs during this window. See, this is the deadly poison tick right here, but I had a deadly poison applications. In your combat log, deadly poison damaged means the dot. Deadly poison hit is the initial attack, the 5,000 or so on the on-hit damage. So the more, I'm gonna do it again real quick here for you. The more deadly poison, or agonizing, or wound, if you're PvPing, the more poison hits in that window that you actually apply, the more damage it'll deal. So again, you want to Envenom, and then Kingsbane, right? And then you want to Mutilate, and then you want to Mutilate again, and then you want to Envenom again to keep that Envenom window going. And then you want to Mutilate again when the energy comes back up. Because every time you're like rushing your energy regeneration right now, because you want to hit as many times in the Kingsbane window. So yeah, my last one right there was 83,000. So we got a little more lucky with the deadly poison applications right there with Kingsbane. So it's a pretty cool application, and it's a 45-second cooldown, and the window of time you're dealing with Kingsbane is a 14-second window. So you're kind of always rotating back and forth every 30 seconds or so with this Kingsbane rotation, which is to get up your Envenom window, pool energy, so you Envenom, Kingsbane, Mutilate, Mutilate, Envenom, Mutilate, Mutilate. Because not only are you auto-attacking in the Envenom window, you're also getting more chances on your Envenoms to put more applications into Kingsbane. But because it costs 35 energy, you have to make sure you're pooling your energy so you can immediately follow that up with Mutilates. So, which is a neat gameplay mechanic, I felt. And it plays into the poisoner role of the Assassination Rogue. So what else do we have here with your artifact weapon? We start right here. Kingsbane. We've got Assassin's Blade, 15% more damage done by your Mutilate. It's fine. Poisoned Knives is when Fan of Knives strikes targets poisoned with your deadly poison. Deadly poison will instantly deal 6% of its remaining damage. So this is even more so why you have more AoE as an Assassination Rogue, I think, versus the other 2 specs. Because not only do you have Fan of Knives doing on-hit damage, you have Fan of Knives applying deadly poison. You have Fan of Knives applying the deadly poison on-hit effect to already poisoned mobs. You have Fan of Knives giving you lots of combo points through Sealed Fate to put up more ruptures. Then you have this effect, which this means that if you're Fan of Knivesing and targets already have deadly poison on them, you will then cause what is called Poisoned Knives to affect, which is a light amount of damage. It's not very much. So the remaining dot amount on your target, which is by your attack power and your mastery stat, and of course versatility, and other procs, of course, and whatever, like damage buffs. Poisoned Knives deals 6% of the remaining damage that each deadly poison application has on it. So the higher the deadly poison application, when Poisoned Knives goes off, it's just more on-hit damage. A lot more. I mean, look at my combat log. It's going crazy right now. It's just poison damage on one Fan of Knives on 3 targets. Poisoned Knives isn't a lot of, like, upfront damage, again, because only 6% of the remaining damage. And by default right now, my deadly poison only does 44,000 damage over 12 seconds. So if it procs, roughly, like, 10% of that would be about 4,000. So... but it's still a lot of additional damage over time, because if you're going to be Fan of Knivesing in your AoE part of your rotation, you're doing it a lot. So Poison Knives is a ton of extra damage. Surge of Toxins also, as finishing moves, will increase the poison damage you deal to the target, only the target you actually put the finishing move on, by 10% for 5 seconds. So see right here next to this, right there? So you get 10% more damage dealt by your poison effects on targets every time you put a finishing move on them. So it'll increase your deadly poison damage, it'll increase your deadly poison on, actually on hit damage, which you see right there is the little poison cloud that poofs right there. So it's a ton of additional damage just on your poisons in general. And again, if you're in the Envenom window, when your weapons are attacking more frequently and applying more poisons, right, you're going to gain, you can see right there. So my deadly poison hits were doing 6,000 damage, and then when it fell off, it was only doing 5,600. So it also will, I'm not sure. I had reports back and forth that it actually does increase Envenom damage, but you have to like pool twice in a row and then get that in that 5-second window. So it may or may not, but I think it's only poison damage is affected. Serrated Edge is 10% critical strike chance on Rupture, which Rupture is like your biggest source of damage, so free crit on your biggest source of damage, sure, why not? Balanced Blades is 6% increased critical strike chance on Mutilate, so this makes that you have a higher critical strike chance on your double attack to give you 4 combo points, because if both hands crit again, you get Sealed Fate. Toxic Blades is increased the 10% damage done by your Envenom. It's fine. Urge to Kill is activating Vendetta, refills all of your energy. This perk has so many little implications and sort of resets the rogue brain by how you pool energy. Because now whenever you Vendetta, which is also reduced by 30 seconds by Master Assassin now, so Vendetta is now a 1.5 minute cooldown. So it lines up with every other Kingsbane, and also lines up with other cooldowns more frequently at the 90-second window here, because your Kingsbane is 45, so every other is 90 seconds. It means you have to, like, dump your energy, and then you Vendetta, because you want to make sure you are utilizing all of that. But now when you Kingsbane, for example, right? You build up some combo points here, put some bleed on here real quick. Now when you Vendetta, you have to, like, dump your energy immediately, so you can do this, Vendetta, Kingsbane, right? Like, you have to immediately react to this, because you're going to lose so much energy if you don't immediately refill it. Which actually I probably should have Envenomed, then Kingsbaned, and then Vendetta'd. But again, I'm not a rogue. So you see what it means, like, with all these little implications to deal additional damage. My combat law is going to break now because those From the Shadows procs right there is totally broken. I may honestly have to relog in this video to make sure it stops doing that. But there's a bug right now with one of your artifact perks. It's pretty terrible. It might be fixed in this build, actually, because we're in a new build, but who knows. We'll see in a moment. But Urge to Kill and Master Assassin is huge, 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 huge. You also have Shadow Walker, which reduces the cooldown of Sprint by 10 seconds. Not a huge deal. Shadow Swiftness, however, is activating Shadow Step, grants you evasion for 2 seconds. So you get 2 seconds of evasion whenever you Shadow Step, which is pretty nice. Not too bad for questing, survivability, PvP, that kind of stuff. Fade into Shadows reduces the cooldown of Cloak of Shadows by 10 seconds. So you get a more often Cloak and more often Sprint as the Assassination Rogue. You also get Master Alchemist down here, which increases the damage dealt by your deadly poison and wound poison by 15%. If you have agonizing poison over here, it also increases the effect of agonizing poison by 7.5%, which is very, very, very little. But it is a stacking additional damage source on top of your agonizing poison, which of course I'll show off more later. And then Gushing Wound is 10% more damage dealt by Rupture. So it's good they put this Rupture one way over here and your other Rupture one way over here, because your Golden Dragons, of course, will be spec'ing a little bit differently. So you start out here with From the Shadows. I think it's probably your number one you want to get first, I would imagine, because not only will you get Poisoned Knives and Surge of Toxins and Serrated Edge going to get this. Looks like they fixed From the Shadows. Did they fix it? May have fixed it in this build. Hallelujah. Because what happens is that From the Shadows causes your declaring your vendetta target unleashes a barrage of poisoned daggers at the target for, that's almost 1,000,000 damage over 20 seconds. Now this is nature damage. I do believe it is factored in with your mastery, but it is nature, not poison. So it's attack power based, then amplified, of course, by your versatility. And in my testing, I did not see that it actually was amplified by the Vendetta debuff because it is part of Vendetta. And Vendetta makes your auto attacks and abilities do more damage, not making Vendetta do also more damage. But I could be wrong here. But that comes out of, like, get the combat log and, like, percentage reverse engineer this buff. But what happens is you get these poisoned knives that fly at your target over the duration, which is just extra single target damage. It's actually, if you look at it really fast, it is, like, your dagger, like, picture. Like, it's the baseline of the Kingsbane right here, right? With the Kingslayers. And it's them flying in, like, as little green. It looks kind of goofy, right? It's very spellish for a rogue. But, yeah, it's a ton of extra damage. It's a lot of damage in that 20-second window. The Assassination Rogue, by default, like, their fantasy is very single-target oriented because you are an assassin, right? So, From the Shadows, probably your number one artifact perk to go towards. Next up, you're going to probably go for Blood of the Assassinated. Rupture has a chance to infect your target, increasing the damage dealt by your Rupture by 100% for 10 seconds. So this one is weird, and I won't be able to, in this video, go over all the little hiccups and burps it revolved in Blood of the Assassinated in this video, but again, in the actual VOD, I go over this multiple times during the course of the 4-hour testing, once we get to artifacts and talents, of course, but this has a, most likely, as every other artifact Golden Dragon perk that has a, like, just built-in chance, it's 0.7 RPPM, I've been told. I may be wrong on that, it could have changed, but by default now, it's a less than once a minute, but always the first Rupture you deal, because of the RPPM internal cooldown nonsense that usually RPPMs will start immediately when you go into combat, right? So if I go over here and just put a Rupture up, it's going to proc. Right, so it's a 100% more damage from Rupture during this 10-second window. There are some shenanigans that I'll show off later that you can actually have more Rupture time in that window, and you can't really play around with it. Like, you can't know it's coming, because you can put, like, a proc watch or internal cooldown watcher on Blood of the Assassinated, but overall, you're not going to, because it might proc after the 1 minute mark, but it might not, because 0.7 RPPM is less than once per minute. So it's always going to proc on the pull, but it's never going to reliably proc every minute. Over a 5-minute fight, you might get 5 or you might get 4. But the shenanigans you can do with this, if you are able to pay attention to it, or just by default, and even on the pull, though, again, the pull window for Assassination is scary, 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 is you get a lot of extra damage from this, obviously. It's double damage. Double the damage of your Rupture in 10 seconds. Then your last one, I think, which is kind of like, is Bag of Tricks, also a 0.7 RPPM, I imagine. It's the Envenom has a chance to smash a vial of poison at the target's location, which creates a pool of acidic death that deals nature damage over 6 seconds to all enemies within it. This animation is actually a lot smaller. Look at that tree in the way, though. It's, again, because it's an RPPM system, it'll always work on your first Envenom you use in combat. There it goes. But you see right here, it actually hits these dummies because it's actually hitting their, their hitbox is, like, you know, further away than that, right? So, like, I'm hitting this dummy, but in this guy's hitbox, right? So, as long as it's connecting with their hitbox, the poison bomb effect will deal damage to them. And it is super good AoE damage, because in AoE situations now, you'll want to at least throw in a couple Envenoms if you haven't seen your Poison Bomb in a while, because then you'll drop the Poison Bomb at your feet, at your target you're hitting, and that'll help you AoE like Scorpion ads or whatever have you. But by default, it's just kind of like, because you can't play around with it as much, and it's only going to happen less than once per minute, and it only gains a lot of damage if you're AoEing a ton of things, probably your last perk you want to go for. It's still good, it's still a lot of damage, but it's still kind of like your last one you'll go for, I think. But, because From the Shadows is guaranteed damage on Vendetta, and it's a ton of damage. Blood of the Assassinated is obviously still an RPPM system, but it's the most damage you can do on your highest damaging source ability of Rupture. And then, of course, you have your Bag of Tricks. So now, talent-wise, this is going to be a weird one for me again, like Subtlety Rogues, because a lot of your talents kind of like have... You need to like talent a certain way. So let me go over your 60 and 75 tiers, which are your personal survivability tiers or your utility tiers. So Leeching Poison, again, is just 10% leech for an hour, as long as you have Leeching Poison on your weapon, which will be fantastic for leveling and probably for raiding in dungeons, because you do a lot of damage over time effects. Even if a lot of them aren't that strong, you have so much poison damage and bleed damage and auto attacks going off that you're going to heal the crap out of yourself for a little bit all the time. Like it's right here, there's all this Sealed Fate, Leech happening right here. Leech has a window of time where it like snapshots your healing. It doesn't actually automatically update every time something does damage. But you see here I'm getting like 17,000 healing, 6,000 healing, 8,000 healing, 5,000, 9,000, 14,000. Like in a raid, I think Leeching Poison is going to be huge because you're going to be healing the crap out of yourself. And again, dead DPS, dead DPS is no DPS. So, but yeah, Leeching Poison is good. You also have Elusiveness, which is just super faint. So Faint will now also reduce all damage you take from non-AoE effects by 30% for 5 seconds. So not only Faint will give you half damage to AoE, it'll also give you 30% less damage taken from like dots, or cleaves, or Saber Lash abilities, or you soaking something with a tank for some reason, or, whatever have you. And being attacked directly in PvP, of course, is Elusiveness will help you out with that. But then Cheat Death, of course, is the 2-minute internal cooldown where a fatal attack will instead reduce you to 7% of your maximum HP. For 3 seconds afterwards, when Cheat Death procs, you'll take 85% reduced damage on a 2-minute ICD. So Cheat Death is good for like cheesing mechanics and, maybe progression for not dying on certain things you're not aware that might kill you. But Elusiveness is for predictive damage patterns, and Leeching Poison is just strong, period. Internal Bleeding is Kidney Shot will do a bleed dot per combo point worth of damage over 12 seconds. This will only work if the target is actually stunned, which kind of sucks. You have to actually stun the target for Internal Bleeding to happen. Internal Bleeding is obviously good for additional damage in raids or dungeons on mobs that can actually be stunned, or of course for PvP for extra bleed damage. This actually does count as a bleed for the purposes of your venomous wounds. But again, it won't work on raid mobs or raid bosses that are immune to stuns because you can't stun them. So your other option here, of course, is Prey on the Weak, which is enemies disabled with your Kidney Shot, Cheap Shot, or Sap will take 10% increased damage from all sources. Because you have Kidney Shot baseline, this makes that, overall, this will do more damage than Internal Bleeding. Internal Bleeding is selfish and good for questing. But Prey on the Weak is good for dungeons and raids. If you can stun a priority mob, for example, like one of those stupid ogres in the Margok fight that could be stunned, then you'll make your entire raid do 10% more damage for that time period during the Kidney Shot, which is more damage than you'll do in that period of time. So it's a super small amount of damage you might think, but it's actually a gigantic raid or dungeon synergy for the rogue to bring to the party. And then Thuggy resets the remaining cooldown on your Garrote when a target dies with your Garrote active. This could also be good for questing as well, but I kind of feel like Internal Bleed is going to be better. But this might be a thing for like PvP or for maybe cross-dotting with Garrote on mobs that die within the Garrote window, so you can get more Garrotes and more combo points, but you'll let me know. I don't know how this will work overall. I kind of feel like Internal Bleeding is so much more on demand, but again, this costs combo points. This costs combo points. This does not cost combo points. This gives you combo points. So that's your back and forth on that tier. So all of them are good options, honestly. I mean, rogues really don't have any bad talents, I think. None of the talents I've seen so far for Assassination are bad. Just some of them are kind of like, but very situational. So There you go. You can pick and choose right there if you so wish. And we'll start here with the combo point tier real quick, because Anticipation is probably the worst one for Assassination, due to the fact that Vigor is 10% more energy regeneration, and you gain a lot more energy regen because of your Venomous Wounds passive, right? And you get 20 extra energy baseline. You're at 170 energy now, and it makes your rotation just faster. It also makes pooling a little bit differently for the Assassination Rogue. It also puts even more weight on your artifact perk here with Urge to Kill, because you'll gain back 170 energy. Obviously, you're not going to gain back all of it, right? But you'll gain back a lot more because you have 50 more baseline. Makes the rotation faster. It makes pooling a little bit more deadly, because now you can pool more energy behind your Kingsbane or your Vendetta windows. So you can put more builders after that. You got to, of course, remember that if you crit a lot with Sealed Fate, you're going to have to use finishers more often, which is fine. But Vigor, I think, feels really good. It also makes your AoE rotation even scarier, because you'll have more energy regeneration, more energy built up baseline, so you can spam more Fan of Knives. So it actually gets a little bit crazy after a little while, where you kind of can't keep up with how much energy you're going to be having. That's just me. I mean, if you're a rogue, you know, it's only 3 targets as well. So over time, you're going to have... So here we go. We've got a lot of energies going on now. You'll see how it just comes back in huge chunks, and you got to keep up with this thing, because it's going to keep going and keep going and keep going, and you have to make sure you're not wasting energy on these targets. And of course, if I had 5 or 6 targets right here, you'd have even more energy coming back to you. So Vigor could be your set and forget for AoE. And while we're talking about AoE right now, I will bring up other talents, and we'll go over AoE-oriented stuff. So, because your whole tier right here with Stealth is very, very, very little interaction with AoE at all for the Assassination Rogue. So for AoE-oriented talent stuff like that, you can look at Elaborate Planning, which your finishing moves grant you a 20% increased damage done buff for 6 seconds. If you're AoE with Vigor, this is happening all the time. All the time. You can also take Master Poisoner, which increases the damage done by all of your poisons by 10% and their non-damaging effects by 20%. So this puts 5% more healing reduction on wound poison, so it goes to 30% healing reduction. It also makes your... Let me see real quick here. It makes your crippling poison a 60% slow from a 50% slow. And I think that's it. It makes your leech poison 12% leech as well. So Master Poisoner is a good passive, but take Elaborate Planning real quick here. Take Vigor, for example. We'll take Alacrity real quick, which is your finishing moves have a 20% chance per combo point to grant you 1% haste for 20 seconds, up to 25 stacks. This does not change if you take DS to have 6 combo points, for example. If you use a finishing move at 6 combo points, you're not going to gain a chance to gain 2 stacks of Alacrity, because there's no stacks of Alacrity. It just gives you 1% haste whenever you actually meet the requirements of it. Okay? And then we'll take Venom Rush, which Venomous Wounds will grant you 3 additional energy each time it grants energy. So we have Vigor, Elaborate Planning, Alacrity, which is haste on stacks, and Venom Rush. So now, this will get a little bit more ridiculous. And I will probably mess this up during this, and you're not going to be able to see how ridiculous it actually is, but we'll get there. And it gives only 3 targets, but you're going to have so many combo points. You're doing 20% more damage because you're in the Elaborate Plan window all of the time, right? Because every time you use a finisher, which is every time you use a Rupture, you gain 20% damage window. You gain all this damage. You have tons of energy. You are just a spinning, blade-wielding, bleeding, poison-oriented... You can't keep up. Look at my energy right now. I can't even... There was arguments to be made on stream that actually it's better to take Anticipation with doing this because you don't need Vigor. But I kind of feel like Vigor definitely makes it go over the top. And, of course, if you have more targets you're hitting, you want the extra room for your energy regeneration so that you're not having to ever cap energy. Because you definitely won't cap your combo points out that fast. I mean, if you do on one Fan of Knife, that's fine. But this is a crazy amount of AoE damage. Because you can just all day. Like, you can never not hit Fan of Knives. I can't burn my energy down fast enough. It's almost probably overkill, but I mean, I'm not a rogue, so I don't know if it's actually bad or not that you have this much wasted resource. So yeah, you could take Anticipation and then store up combo points and use multiple finishers in a row so you can weave in some Envenoms, right? Because now you have Envenom up this whole time. Now your auto attacks during this period of time will also be applying more deadly poison on hit effects. So it is crazy, crazy, crazy fast because Alacrity stacks super quick. And that gives you more haste for more auto attacks, for more deadly poison application on hits, and for more energy regeneration, because haste gives you energy regeneration, of course. And then you have vigor for more energy regeneration, more energy. Elaborate planning is basically a 20% passive damage increase, period, because you're using finishers so often. And then Venom Rush, or Venom Zest, is 3 more energy every time it deals damage. So now your Venomous Wounds is 10 damage each time a bleed damages a poison target. So... Whoa. It's it's crazy. So now everything else is going to be more single target focused now. So let's bring it back down. Let's bring in Hemorrhage, which is a 30 energy melee range, no cooldown, 1 combo point generating ability, where we rip a gushing wound in the target, dealing only physical damage, and then you increase the bleed damage from your abilities on the target by 30% for 20 seconds. Okay. There was some talk about using Hemo in the cross-dot rotation. So Elaborate Planning gives you 20% more damage done, period. So your dots, your poisons, your Fan of Knives all deal more damage. But you saw how much energy I had there? You could just tab Hemorrhage things. And then when you're putting up all of those ruptures, they'll all take 30% more damage from the rupture, and one random target will take more damage from your Garrote, right? But then you could take Thuggy, and if you keep killing targets, you can put up more Garrotes, maybe? I don't know. It's possible. But then that means your other abilities and your poisons are doing less damage, but your bleeds are doing more. So that just comes down to some math. But by default, Hemorrhage is very single target focused, I would say. So that will take Deeper Stratagem, which is you can build up to 6 combo points now. So all of your abilities will now do more damage flatly. So 6 combo points is higher base damage on all your combo point abilities. And all your combo point finishers do 20% more damage. So Rupture again is now at 641,000 damage. Plus 30%, because Hemo will be up all the time. That's gonna be at 1,000,000 damage. I can't see how it would not be at like 1,000,000 damage, or pretty damn close to it. So that's bonkers. You can then take Agonizing Poison, which is a lethal poison that lasts for 1 hour. Each strike has a 20% chance or 50% chance during the Envenom window to poison the enemy for 12 seconds, which increases all damage it takes from your abilities by 6% up to 5 stacks. And this is the slow rotation. Rotate Death from Above as well, which if you don't know what Death from Above does, it's 1 to 6 combo points right now, where it's a finishing move that you deal a little bit of AoE damage on the ground. Then you fly up in the air on a 20-second cooldown, 15-yard range, 25 energy cost, and you do a 50% stronger effect on an Envenom. That means that your Envenom window now lasts longer. So if you're looking at a pure single target build, I would think this would probably be it. I'll now bring up the Stealth tier. So Shadow Focus is abilities cost 50% less energy while Stealth is active. Which is not like a huge deal. Because you're only going to get one ability and then vanishes on a 2-minute cooldown. So it's like, Subterfuge means your abilities that you require stealth can be used for 3 seconds after stealth breaks, so you can cheap shot multiple things in a row, right? But it also causes your Garrote to deal 100% increased damage and have no cooldown when used from stealth or 3 seconds after stealth breaks. So this means that your Garrote on the opener, or when you rotate through stealth in a DPS situation, you can make your Garrote deal 100% more damage, which is not bad, again, coupled with Hemorrhage. But here's the weird one. Night Stalker is that while stealth is active, you move 20% faster and your abilities deal 50% more damage. It's a strange one. It says abilities. This snapshots. Right? So you can snapshot a agonizing poison debuff stacked mob with a 6 stack or a 6 combo point, 20% stronger, 30% stronger hemorrhaged Death from Above, or you can do it with Rupture. And it's a little bit crazy. So you also can do it with your King's Bane as well, which I don't know what the best use of it is. This is also why, like, the stealth rotation is kind of weird for the Assassination Rogue, because it's so good that it only happens so often, but it gives you super crazy bursts. So let's stack up our Agonizing Poison on the target here real quick. So again, Agonizing Poison, because I have the Artifact perk right now, it's a little stronger than the actual tooltip reads. So there we go. It's going to be, that's a 3 stacks. We'll try to get, let's do it in Venom so we get more chance to proc it. So we'll go to 5 stacks real quick here. There we go. So we're at 40% increased damage. That tooltip bug you're seeing at 40% right there is because of the Master Poisoner thing. This is causing another poison stack of Agonizing Poison to stack, or it's giving 10% more damage to all the stacks of Agonizing Poison, which I'm pretty sure isn't supposed to happen, because gaining that weird 40% damage window, and then this still gives you 10% more damage, is, I would assume, a bug. They haven't figured out how to make that coding work so the Surge of Toxins does not give you an extra stack of Agonizing. That's kind of terrible. But so, okay, so take Agonizing Poison up on the mob right now, right? Which is 33% at my current amount of damage stacks, right? And now what you're going to want to do is put up Hemo. You're going to put up your Garrote, obviously, right? Then you're going to Vendetta, Vanish, Rupture. So my Rupture right now is ticking for 682,000 critical strikes, 816 crit Garrotes. No, 86,000 Garrotes, sorry, 86,000. So yeah, Rupture again, 682,000 damage on Ruptures. That was also with the Blood of the Assassinated perk, which is double damage. So, real quick, Rupture right now says it does 641,000 damage over 28 seconds. These ticks are doing 682,000 on crits. Excuse me? And because Rupture has more crit chance because your artifact as well, it really makes this, like, Night Stalker, Hemo, DS, Agonizing Poison, like, super scary. I take DFA in this constant because it also gives you, because you have the perk from your DS, right, Deeper Stratagem, that now DFA gives you a 10-second window of Envenom right here. So it makes your King's Bane windows now even stronger because you get the window of Envenom time for longer. So now when you use your King's Bane, for example, right? So you will, I'll wait for my cooldown to come back up here real quick. So you will keep your bleeds, whatever. I'll put my bleed up here again real quick. This is with Agonizing Poison again as well, because Agonizing Poison will mean that you do more damage on the target with your DFA as well. So now I'll put up, I'll Death from Above. Boom. Then I will put King's Bane up, and then I'll go to town. So that DFA actually hit for, oh my god, let's find it real quick. Guess we had 50... Wait, where is it? Death from Above, here real quick here. That's the AoE attack, and then DFA hit for... Where'd it go? I lost it. Mutilate right here, but only 50,000? That's not right. Hang on a second. Let's do that again. There's the AoE effect. There it is. There's the Venom. So 246,000 damage in Venom on the DFA hit. And the DFA hit, of course, does the little AoE first for both hands. Well, out from your hands. I guess not both hand weapons, because it just hits all around you. So I hit all 3 targets around here. So, again, we'll do the... we'll store up our energy real quick here again. We'll put up our bleeds. And this is why the rotation gets a little bit, like, crazy, because you have to wheel around all these rotational abilities, and you have all the nonsense going on with your different poisons and timing. So, again, DFA, land, King's Bane, start building. Right? Well, I'll put Hemo up, I guess, too, somewhere in there. But that's not going to affect your King's Bane damage. And we have the DFA window up this whole time. The Venom window is still rolling. So, what did my poison end at? Didn't get too much there. Only 53,000 on the last King's Bane tick. So obviously that just comes down to just if your poison ticks. This is also why, which is good to show this off, is that I have Agonizing Poison right now, which even in the DFA window, or the Envenom window overall, Agonizing Poison only has a 50% chance to apply. So you actually will apply less stacks, but because Agonizing Poison is a flat damage amplification on all of your abilities you deal, I wonder what's better. Because you can take Alacrity right now and not worry about that, and then you can take Deadly Poison, and Deadly Poison in the DFA window then has a 80% chance to proc, right? The Stronger in Venom window. So you have this Stronger in Venom window going on. That's a misclick right there. So that you have more Deadly Poisons happening over time because you have this longer window going on, and because you build up to a higher combo point timer, right? I'm not sure what's the better one to do here. What are my Kingsbane stacked right there? Yeah, 76,000 again. So I kind of feel like if you're going to utilize Kingsbane for those burst windows on certain encounters, it's almost better to use Deadly Poison and not Agonizing. But that just could come down to numbers, because Agonizing might make your Kingsbane do less damage for burst windows, but overall you'll do more damage entirely. But because it procs less applications of Lethal Poison and does no actual damage, you don't gain the Deadly Poison AoE. Obviously, you're not going to Agonizing Poison for AoE. That's just bad. Because you're not going to be Deadly Poisoning. You're not going to be using your... It makes it a dead perk. So your Poison Knives with Agonizing does nothing. Because it works on Deadly Poison, right? So Agonizing Poison just doesn't work. So it's weird. I don't know where Agonizing Poison will fall into this, because then your other talent down here is Exsanguinate. Exsanguinate is how I'm going to end this video. And actually, the server is restarting in 6 minutes, so I have to finish the video up in that time. So I apologize if we get a little bit quick here. Exsanguinate reads, you twist your blades into the target's wounds, causing your bleed effects on them. Bleed effects, all of them, so it'll affect internal bleeding if you have it on a target. It'll affect your rupture and your garrote. By 400% faster. They'll bleed out 400% faster. Now, there are 3 things to talk about with Exsanguinate. People were asking me how this works. You cannot pandemic your rupture during the Exsanguinate window. If you reapply Rupture when Exsanguinate is on the target, it will break the Exsanguinate. So the 2 ways you can utilize this, and it kind of has some weird synergies, of course, with Blood of the Assassinated, is that you can put up a 6-point... what you can do is put up a Rupture, right? Put up a Rupture at 6 points with DS. Put up your Hemo, right? Obviously, we're going to ignore that the Blood of Assassinate just procced right here. What you can do is you can pandemic your Rupture to the full amount of 36 seconds, and then you can Exsanguinate. Because what it will do is it will make that... Oh my god. Gee, look at how fast Venomous Vim is over and over and over and over and over and over again. So this made that 36-second long... Right, because Rupture by default is 28 plus 30% for the pandemicing effect. That made that 36-second dot. Let me see real quick here. 32 seconds when I applied. Let's see when I actually apply it. Exsanguinate was probably like right here with Rupture at 31 seconds. Nope. Rupture damaged. I don't know where it was. Probably around here somewhere. It made that entire dot tick out in probably about 400% faster of 36 seconds. So it looks like it took about 10, 12 seconds or so. Is that the math properly there? Or 8 seconds? 8, 16, 24, 36. Something like that. So it makes Rupture this incredibly disgusting burst window. And I took Death from Above, or Marked for Death real quick here, because Marked for Death lets you pandemic that window faster. So you can just Mark for Death Garrote, put up your Rupture, right? Put up this. So you automatically have that Rupture going. And then you can build back up to your Rupture again, cast it up there, and then you can Exsanguinate. And then watch as the numbers fly. So Mark for Death has that possibility to make it happen faster. Or what you can do, again, you cannot put up... If you reapply Rupture when you already Exsanguinated the Rupture currently on the target, it'll break the Exsanguinate and it'll go back to normal speed. What you can also do is if you get to play around with the Blood of the Assassinated window with Mark for Death, is if this procs, right? Like if you put up your Rupture and then you Exsanguinate and then you're rebuilding back to your next Rupture, what you can do is you can mark for death to rebuild, and right when that Exsanguinated Rupture falls off, you can re-Rupture and take advantage of the Blood of the Assassinated window for like 2 to 3 ticks maximum if you're that quick and you're not lagging. Because you can put a Rupture up after that first Rupture falls off that puts up Blood of the Assassinated, and then take advantage of that window a little bit more. It's like 2 more ticks worth of it, but still, that's a way to min-max the marked for death version of how that works around. But marked for death by that default is kind of gamey, where I kind of feel like death from above for single target might be a lot more beneficial, because you could just have death from above, and this is how it goes back to the whole A, B, C, D rotations now. Because now every 20 seconds, you're using DFA. But every 45 seconds, you want to delay a DFA, you're going to be using Kingsbane. Or you DFA right before you Kingsbane just so you're in the window longer. So you have like those windows to play around with, right? And then you have the Exsanguinate 40, the Night Stalker snapshotting with Vanish window. Then you have, of course, the Crazy Vendetta, refill all of your energy every 90-second window, which every other 90-second window with Vendetta, you're working on Kingsbane timing. So, and then you have to worry about, again, you have to Exsanguinate properly, and every other Exsanguinate actually lines up with Kingsbane, but you don't want to use Exsanguinate when you're playing with Kingsbane because you don't want to use Rupture then, because you want to care about your bleeds. So there's a lot of little things that have these, like, different micro-rotational road bumps in the Assassination Rogue. But that's it in a nutshell right now. And I think it has a ton of gameplay ability. It's a lot more straightforward, except for all these kind of like weird, like if then this problems. But again, you can spec super for AoE, or super for single target smooth damage, or super for burst with its Sanguinate on single target burst damage. But I think it's pretty awesome. Again, check the video description box below if you want to watch the full VOD. And give a like if you enjoyed the episode. Give that thumbs up down below. Subscribe for more of these in the future. Check out my channel guide for all my other coverage. Oh, goodness me. Thank you all so much for watching. That's the Assassination Rogue. And let me know in the comments below what you think. And what other weird talent combinations and nonsensical things you can think of that make this a ridiculously single target bursty spec. And I will see you all in the next Legion testing video. Royal servers go down in the background right here. Here it goes. Boop.